Hi, I'm Mikan Hana.
And I'm Caliban.
And we're the hosts of the Sailor Noob podcast. I'm the expert.
And I'm the noob.
You're talking into the wrong end of the microphone.
Aye, aye.
Okay, every week we watch a new episode of Sailor Moon and learn about monsters, fashion, food, culture, and of course, the Sailor Warrior of Love and Justice, Sailor Moon.
All right, now, what is her rank? Is she an admiral or a rear admiral?
Okay, shh. The ad's almost over. We're a couple of magical people, and every week we Moon Prism Power make up a new episode.
Steady as she goes.
Please stop that. Sailor Noob is available every Friday on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Shiver me timbers.
It's worked so far, but we're not out yet.
I wanna know what you're thinking. There are some things you can't hide. I wanna know what you're feeling. Tell me what's on your mind.
Pure energy. Pure energy.
Hailing frequencies open, and welcome to Enterprising Individuals, the Star Trek discussion podcast that boldly goes into excruciating detail about the series, characters, and stories of the Star Trek universe. I'm your host, Aaron Coker, a.k.a. Caliban, and if T'Pol thinks that Trip smells bad, wait till she has to hear him munch on Funyuns all day long. I'm joined in this episode once again by Gooey Fame. Gooey is a musician and a podcaster and the host of shows like Pro Wrestling Required Viewing, which looks at wrestling-adjacent pod culture, Virtual Theater, a podcast about video game movies and the stories that shape them, and Backtrekking, a podcast that looks at the real-world inspirations behind your favorite episodes of Star Trek. Gooey, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back on.
Permission to come back aboard granted. Today we'll be talking about the Andorian Incident, the 6th episode of the first season of Star Trek Enterprise. It's fair to say that Enterprise gets a bad rap. It's also fair to say that it might not be the most consistent or well-written Star Trek series, but come on, have you seen TOS Season 3? Enterprise debuted at a time when Trek's message of hope and human endeavor was being drowned out by world events. Google 9/11 for more information. And it's possible that a prequel series with a more intrepid, cowboyish incarnation of humanity may have been co-opted by those events just a little bit. Side note, if you haven't seen Connor Trinneer play George W. Bush in the movie American Made, you are missing out. The task of telling the story of how humanity became the decider of the United Federation of Planets was always going to be a tough proposition, a sum less than its parts, but at least they gave it a shot. If the pitch is Sam Beckett from Quantum Leap killing space Al-Qaeda while securing humanity's place in the cosmos, that's a buy in the room for a 20th century TV executive. But as we learned in 2001, the first year of the 21st century, the world, including entertainment, was rapidly changing, and Trek had a lot of catching up to do. But like any Trek series, Enterprise, when it's doing what Trek does best, is a damn fun watch. But we'll talk about that a little later in the show. First of all, Gooey, welcome back to the show. Hey. And what is going on with you?
Not much. I'm just, I don't know. Just
How incredible. How do you do it? How great it would be to have nothing going on.
Well, it's almost like so much going on that
it's just a low hum.
We're doing I think we're doing a double duty recording session here. So it's
peek behind the curtain.
I was like, what is going on today? Oh yeah, that's right.
Which
a podcast
of my
marathon.
Several podcasts am I recording for today? Yeah, we are doing that. And I was thinking like, it's almost like, let's just talk for 2 hours and then we'll just cut it in half and just, whichever one goes, to whichever outlet is probably fine.
That's not a bad idea. I did my preparation for this all in one go, so I was starting to think I was starting to compare everything together. I'm like thinking about Casablanca.
Right, yeah. Then Bogey shows up, on the Suliban ship, and
Yeah.
I have been stress eating like a maniac, and I think at some point, maybe stress eating, it's bad. It's how you gain 1 million pounds. But what if it's like leveling up? What if I finally reach enough food and then I evolve like a Pokemon? What if I turn into Calazard, from Caliban?
Would you become a stress type Pokemon?
Stress type,
or
yes.
Or is that what you already
attacks.
are?
Yeah, well, yeah, I start off that way, but I would, reach my next evolution. So to chill out, I'm trying to chill out. I'm having the good coffee, and it's even in a clean mug for this episode. So I'm going to enjoy a little bit of that. And I came up with a new working procedure. I have a laptop, and then I have it hooked up to a very large monitor that I use to watch stuff when I'm watching Trek episodes and stuff for the show.
Okay.
And then I decided that wasn't enough, so I added a second laptop on my desk to take notes for when I'm doing other things. So I don't know if you've ever seen a Neil Breen movie, but I have almost as many laptops as Neil Breen at this point.
You're leveling up in all terms of all sense of the terms, I guess. You're physical, you're technological.
Yes, I'm doubling down for
yes. Sure. Amazing.
Well, we got to meet in person a little while ago to record an episode of our other Star Trek podcast, which I'm sure will come up once or twice on this show, called Backtrekking. And in doing so, you got to introduce me to a arcade in your hometown called Underground Retrocade. And it's basically what it sounds like. It is a bunch of old-style stand-up video game cabinets. Kids, I don't know, man. Google Images, I guess. But otherwise, yeah. And, you get in for a nominal fee, and then you get to play unlimited old-style video games. And I thought it was really, really awesome.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, entrance fee and then do whatever, because I think you're more willing to, try out stuff you wouldn't normally,
Yeah.
Because you don't have that, I don't know if I want to put a quarter in this. What if it doesn't even work,
Right. I thought that I had played every second of Burger Time that I ever would again. But then when I was walking by Burger Time, I was like, I can play Burger Time.
Yeah. There's I was like, oh, what's this, Pac-Man knockoff game? Well, I might as well try it. And it looks cool, and I play it for a little bit. I'm like, well, this is... Certainly, I see why Pac-Man was the popular one, but
yeah,
that was fun. I like how it can, open up new horizons in the arcade world, even though these games are, 30 years old or more.
Yeah. It opened up a horizon for me in that I got a chance to actually play the Star Trek arcade game,
yes.
which I had seen. I've seen dusty, broken ones at amusement companies. I saw one at at Shore Leave Convention that was for sale for $2,800. It's a little steep for me. But yeah, I got to finally play one that was in perfect condition, and it was a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. I felt like I played it a little bit too, and I felt like it was maybe a little bit like the controls aren't it's not totally fluid. It's not if you compare it to the Star Wars game that has that similar look. Yeah, what do you call that? The rotoscope look?
It's 3D vector graphics.
Vector, that's the word I was looking for. Yeah. It looks less, it feels, less fluid, because you've got your warp and you've got your torpedoes and your regular phasers, and it all kind of is when you're turning, you got to spin this knob and it turns not as fast as you want it to. But for me, it's it actually did feel a little bit kind of how I would imagine, controlling a ship like that would be. It's a little bit more complicated to turn than an X-Wing is,
Right.
There's all these moving pieces, so I really enjoyed it, actually.
Yeah, I love, they had that Star Wars arcade one too, and I played that quite a bit. That's another game that it just screams 80s to you, the black background with the very simplistic, the vector graphics and everything. And I could play something like that all day long, but it's also just really easy and repetitive. I was watching a video, or I guess there's a saying in the video game industry that a good video game is usually a 30-second loop, of actions or activities that you just find a good loop, you repeat it over and over, and then the rest of the job is disguising the fact that a player is just doing the same thing over and over again, making it fun. And I think that Star Wars one really does that. This one is a little different. Yeah, I think you're right on with how it's sort of different in its controls, but I think I tried to approach it very simulation esque in like, we're going to go forward, you're going to do this, you can do that. And if you play it a little looser, I was kind of spinning that knob at one point, like a foosball table pole. And you play it a little like run and gun, not necessarily how you might command the Enterprise. You can get farther. I actually took a video of myself playing that if people want to check that out on the Enterprising Individuals Instagram. But yeah, a lot of fun. So thanks a lot for taking me there.
Yeah, that was a great time.
It's part of this whole retro kind of aesthetic, or this hunger for things from our past that I see a lot in pop culture, especially nerd pop culture these days. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to dig too far into it, but we are going to talk about a show that's almost 20 years old at this point today on the show. They also had a lot of those fighter games, like the side-scrolling fighter games.
Yes,
which I played so many of those in my lifetime. The Final Fights, or the Double Dragons or whatever. And that's it. When I'm like shopping on the Nintendo Switch store, that's something that I will drop some money on. I got like a Final Fight. What do you call it? Like a collection of games. So it had like Knights of the Round and Final Fight and all those games from whether I think it's Capcom or whoever made those. You get like 10 of them at a pop, and they're all the same thing. It's just like you've got a sword instead of being a shirtless mayor.
I think there's a lot of cool shirtless mayor. That's one of the best video game characters of all time, actually. But I never like was able to get those type to click with me, because it's either I'd play them in the arcade and I was kind of bad at them, and so it's like, well, I don't want to keep putting money in this, or I'd get the home version. And it's like there's nothing stopping you, so like it's like why try to be good at it when I just keep continuing,
Yeah, I do. I do feel like I'm getting away with something. Yeah, when I play those, and you go, "Oh, I'm dead." Well, here we go again. Yeah,
just crank the quarter button up, and
Yep. But I mean, I really like those games, and I think that they give you a lot of good life lessons. It's okay to eat food that's on the ground. It's fine. Doing your special is jump and attack at the same time, but it will take some of your own health away. So it's wise to never try that hard. It's too stressful, and good life lessons.
You can pick up computers lying around and smash people with them.
And just go ahead and stab somebody. It's fine.
Yeah.
I always like how the guys are like, the whole point is Cody and Hagar are like honed. They have their fighting skills. But man, if you get a chance to get a knife, pick that thing up. Just stab somebody.
Yeah, it's like...
This is the final fight. There are no more fights after this.
Oh.
Well, I'm exercising a bit of captain's prerogative today, again, on this season. We've branched out a lot in this season of Enterprising Individuals, talking about shows that don't get as much love as TNG and DS9 and even TOS. We've talked about the animated series. We've talked about Discovery on this show. And we've talked about Enterprise. We did it once this season, but I wanted to kind of double back and do it again and talk about an episode of Enterprise that is inarguably a good episode, to just spoil, I guess, our reviews of it. Plus, it's kind of a Halloween episode. I'll talk about it later, but this episode came out. This episode came out on October 31st of 2001. So it kind of fits when this is coming out, just after Halloween. But yeah, and it's also got Jeffrey Combs coming back to the franchise for the billionth time and creating an all-new character, which is really what he's good at.
Yeah, I wish they would have leaned more into the Halloween nature of that. That would have been great.
Well, as we'll talk about, you know what? We'll talk about all this later. I'll show you all the connections and how they go together.
Ooh, okay.
When we get there. I was going to say, before we get rolling, though, like, what's your opinion of Enterprise?
I think, you made me think earlier about how Enterprise is kind of... It's weird because it's like a lot of it is trying to like feel like classic Star Trek, but it is at this weird moment in time it's coming out where like a lot like people are kind of like a lot of media is like changing drastically, especially after 9/11 and everything. So it is this weird mix, and
it's not just in subject matter. It's also in another show that came out right after 9/11 was 24, and of course it could have just been an interesting experiment, but thanks to Osama bin Laden, it became a show that ran for 10 years.
Yeah.
But also it was this completely different thing where it was, hey, Trek, you like your little one-shot episodes? Well, forget that. This is, you have to watch every single episode of this 24-hour day to never miss. And that, I think, just really presaged like the kind of things that we'd be looking at later on, which is reality shows, shows that have this hard baked-in continuity, YouTube videos. Trek really was a dinosaur, ironically, when it was trying to refresh and go back to the egg part of their franchise.
Yeah, and so one thing, because it is like, it does hit a lot of the same notes that, the previous series did hit, but is one thing that I said when we covered an episode on our podcast, Backtrekking, was the episode we had watched, I didn't think it wasn't very good, but I felt like it was very watchable because it just like felt like Star Trek in a lot of ways, like the music and like the way the story was progressing, and like Odo was there, like I said, so, and like this is that same kind of thing, like maybe spoiling how I felt, but like I thought the episode was all right. But then it was like the whole time I was like, yeah, this is fun to watch. It's Star Trek.
Yeah. If people haven't heard that episode, we're talking about Oasis, I believe, right?
Yeah, Oasis.
And comparing it, of course, to The Tempest, but also to Forbidden Planet, the sci-fi classic. And I think that we remarked, or I told an anecdote about how Renee Auberjonois, of course, guest stars in the episode. And they were pointing out, or somebody on the set was pointing out, didn't you guys do an episode of the show where you go to some place and there's a guy and it's kind of like The Tempest, and he's just like, oh yeah, I guess we did that.
Yeah.
It's just, that's like the height of being checked out. Like, I know that this franchise has been around for like 35 years at that point, but I think part of the problem was they were kind of checked out. And I hope that we can prove today that when they're not checked out and they've got, something exciting to do, I think they really can land it.
Yeah, totally.
Well, let's talk about what they landed today. It's called The Andorian Incident, the 6th episode of the first season of Star Trek Enterprise. It first aired on October 31st of 2001. The teleplay is by Fred Decker. And I believe that we've talked about him on the show, but maybe not. If we haven't, he is probably most famous for his film work, having written and directed the horror movie House and Night of the Creeps, as well as RoboCop 3, and the 1987 cult hit Monster Squad, which he co-wrote with his friend and UCLA classmate Shane Black. So there's your Halloween connection there. Okay. He also, weak as it is, he also co-wrote the screenplay for Black's 2018 reboot of the Predator franchise entitled The Predator.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, so as far as like people wanting nostalgia and wanting things to look like they were before, that's kind of Shane Black's whole career at this point.
Yeah.
Decker actually wrote 3 episodes of Enterprise in total, and he served as a consulting producer for the entire first season of Enterprise. The story for the episode is by Rick Berman and Brandon Braga and Fred Decker himself. Berman and Braga, clearly no introduction necessary, talked about them a lot on the show. Suffice it to say they're the co-creators of Enterprise.
Yeah, certainly.
The episode is directed by Roxanne Dawson, the actress behind Voyager's B'Elanna Torres, of course. She became a prolific director on Enterprise, directing 10 episodes, in addition to the 2 Voyager episodes that she directed as well, and she is directing up a storm today. She's a very successful TV director. The stardate for the episode is not valid because they were not using stardates, but the date on the Gregorian calendar is June 19th, 2151. And since I kind of picked this, it's my assignment to give it a 25-word synopsis. Whew. And here's my 25-word synopsis of the Andorian Incident. While visiting a Vulcan monastery, Archer and crew are taken hostage by Andorians who believe the monks are hiding a clandestine and treaty-breaking observation post.
All right, yeah, that's nice and succinct there.
And treaty breaking is hyphenated. That's a little pro tip. That's how you cheat.
Ooh, okay. Oh, okay. Was that exactly the right amount of words?
I don't mean to be some Johnny come lately from a hole in the wall.
Most people have to struggle through this segment. Well, not most people, but maybe I did.
Well, that's an example of cause and effect, I guess. I can't think of any more hyphenated words, but yeah. Here's some interesting facts from the memory banks about this episode. This is the first appearance of the Andorians in Enterprise, and I haven't totally worked it out, but possibly chronologically in the franchise. Their makeup was redesigned by franchise makeup designer Michael Westmore. The Andorians and Shran in particular would go on to be recurring characters in Enterprise, but they were almost never in this episode. The original plan was for the episode to feature the Gorn as the antagonists. Of course, the Gorn are the giant lizard-headed guys from the whole, arena episode.
Yeah, they show up. They show up in Enterprise, don't they? Or am I thinking of something else?
I believe they do.
I think they show up and they're like CG by this time, and it's really weird.
Yeah, they do. That's right. Yeah, and they're also in the Star Trek 2009 video game.
Oh yeah,
and they're like velociraptors almost. Like they really went all out with it.
What was wrong with the Gorn? Is fine. Okay, we don't need to get into that, but I feel like the Gorn was fine in the original series. Like, we don't need to change how they look.
They were fine. I agree. I think the theme of this episode is going to be nostalgia. I think, you got a bunch of old hands working on a Star Trek prequel series, and they're like, well, let's do the Gorn. But the consensus was that, can the Gorn talk or can they speak English? And, an important part of this is going to be the antagonists ultimately, communicating and cooperating with Archer. So if they're just like, maybe that's not going to work. So they swap them out for the Andorians with, I think, a similar nod to nostalgia. According to Brandon Braga, they wanted to take the Andorians, a race that had been seen as kind of silly, and make them cool with a revamp. They also wanted to make them more believable as a culture and have them fit better into the galactic neighborhood of that time period. So the conflict with the Vulcans was devised. Andoria and Vulcan were already established as being in proximity to each other in the DS9 episode in the Pale Moonlight. And so this conflict between these two races would continue for 6 more episodes into the 4th season and finally be resolved in the episode Kirshara.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was one of the, I don't know, it's been a while since I've seen those, but I felt like remembering that was something I was at least interested in while watching Enterprise. Like, I thought it was cool. I thought the Andorians, in contrast to the Gorn, looked cool. They looked cool. They were interesting, like, they're a little edgy, so I don't know. I liked them.
Yeah, it's cool, too, how you've got this running thing in Enterprise about how humanity has met, these wonderful aliens. And then, of course, as humanity gets older, they realize that the aliens aren't as amazing as they think. And they've got their own dirty secrets and dark problems. It's like it's a kid growing up and realizing that his dad doesn't have all the answers,
Oh, yeah.
And so, unfortunately, we don't get far enough in Enterprise to get out of the "you're not my real dad" phase that Archer and humanity seems to have against the Vulcans. But yeah, the Andorians get to be that their war with them becomes this like uncharacteristic, dirty little secret that they have. Fred Decker was assigned to write the episode. This episode would define them, of course, as being emotional in contrast to the Vulcans and kind of paranoid. Cool fact, their antennae, the antennae of the Andorians in the episode were controlled by individual puppeteers using, those radio control things like RC cars. And there were some concerns that the antennae would distract from or overpower the performances of the actors. So they kept the movements very subtle, and they developed like a specific language or semaphore of emotional positions to keep the motions consistent. I heard them described as kind of like cat's ears, like they would, sort of go forward if they were sort of interested in something, and they would sort of flip back if they were sort of thinking or they were kind of, discouraged or something like that.
Yeah, I definitely noticed them a lot, but I thought it always looked like anytime I noticed, I was like, oh, this looks pretty cool, actually.
Yeah. And to that end, I believe the 2 non-speaking Andorians they didn't move. They didn't have puppeteers. So.
Oh yeah, it's like the background actors.
You don't want some background guy, wiggling around with his antennae. Yeah. And you know what? It worked. The Andorians proved very popular with fans, and plans were immediately made for them to return, which they did in the episode Shadows of Pajem, the 14th episode of season 1. This is the first mention of Surak in Enterprise. He's, of course, the father of logic to the Vulcan people, and the exploration of his teachings and their continuing effect on Vulcan society would be explored in later episodes of Enterprise. He actually would appear in the 4th season episodes The Forge and Awakening. And also, of course, he appears in The Savage Curtain, the 3rd season episode of TOS.
Yes.
Do you remember that one? I want to talk about that episode someday because, first of all, it's got a great alien design in the what's his name? I can't remember, but he's like a little folding transformer rock. And then Abe Lincoln shows up.
Yeah, that's all I remember.
I bet they really wanted Hitler to show up, but there was a lot of guys that fought in World War II, and they were probably like, let's not do Hitler. And then like Surak is there, and he's like, let's not fight, and he dies like immediately.
Oh, well, that kind of buries him a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. He jobs for them, yeah. And it's not in like a cool, he doesn't like sacrifice himself in a cool way. His whole thing is like, look, I'm not a violent person. It's a moral victory if they violently kill me. And our Star Trek heroes have never felt that way, at least not at this point in their development. And so, yeah, I think he is shown to, he kind of gets bitched out pretty quick.
Isn't Lincoln in he's in outer space?
Yes.
Okay.
No explanation. Yeah,
oh
pretty
my
great.
Gosh. Okay.
Pretty great. There's a lot of interesting prop facts about this episode, and I just, we don't usually dig too deep into the props in the show, but if you are interested in that, this is a more recent series, Enterprise, so a lot more of the props that were used and reused are accounted for. So there's information about those, where they came from, how they were designed, and stuff like that on Memory Alpha. So if you're into that, definitely check it out. There's let's talk about some of the guest stars in this episode. Jeffrey Combs, of course, appears as Commander Thylak Shran, who became a major recurring character in subsequent seasons. And he, what do you say about Jeffrey Combs at this point? In fact, I don't think we've actually really focused on Jeffrey Combs on this show before, so this is our chance to do it.
All right, Jeffrey.
Jeff, welcome. Yes.
He's always just pulling out the stops. I feel like he does because he does 2 characters in one series, right? He's a heavy hitter.
Yeah, he is so great. I respect him so much, and I'm sure that there are a lot of Star Trek fans probably listening to this who have met him. I've never met him, but I would love to. And I don't know, if I had more than 30 seconds to talk to him, I'd just try to get to the bottom of what his plan is, or what he thought his career was going to be. Because I think that he has carved out such a good career as this guy in TV shows, B, C movies, these sort of genre picks, doing these character bits. And he's a fantastic actor. He is very handsome. I feel like he could have easily been, a bigger name. And yet he's just known as this really, anytime he shows up in something, I know 2 things. 1, he's going to nail it. And 2, it's probably not what you would consider AAA entertainment, but it's probably going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's there's something more appealing about that at times too.
Yeah, okay. So maybe this is that garbage thing that we were talking about.
Not even garbage, because it's he's good. It's good. Yeah. It's Star Trek. That's not the movies he's in or whatever, but it's almost this is, you almost get to be in your mind. You get to feel a little satisfied and be this is the real shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he was in 31 episodes of Deep Space Nine.
Yes.
He was in 1 episode of Star Trek Voyager and 11 episodes in total of Star Trek Enterprise. And there's a couple little things about some of his appearances. He played both Wei-Yun and Brunt in different scenes of the DS9 episode Dogs of War, making him one of only 3 Star Trek actors to play 2 different characters in the same episode.
Okay, I think I can guess the others.
Go for it.
Brent Spiner would be one.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
2 different characters? Is that what we're...
The distinction of the fact that I'm pulling from Memory Alpha is 2 unrelated characters. So characters that don't meet on screen via compositing or aren't brothers or whatever. So
okay, I have no idea.
Well, I'll give you the tough one, and then maybe you can try for the easy one. The tough one is the actor Brian Markinson, who played Pete Durst who is a Voyager officer, and the character Sulan in Faces. This is where they meet the the people's faces are falling off because they have the disease in Voyager, the phage. So that's one of those things.
Yes.
That's one of those things where you can have your extra be like, oh, okay, he's got a blue uniform on or whatever, and then some other guy who's just got a garbage bag on his head, so you're good there.
And then the other one is it's probably something that I would kick myself for not knowing, right?
Well, that's keep you from kicking yourself. So logically, what are we talking about? The holodeck, right? That's how you do that.
Okay, holodeck character. Okay. What series?
Okay, it's TNG.
TNG holodeck. I'm tapping out. Who is it?
You've seen the episode this year.
This year.
We watched it for a episode we didn't end up doing for backtracking.
Oh, what wasn't that the Defector? Is that what you're talking about?
That's the episode.
Oh, I don't even remember what they go on the holodeck for that?
Yes, we're still going to do this one on backtracking.
Is there a side holodeck story?
Yes.
Oh my god.
This wasn't very memorable.
Well, yeah, no.
Time's up.
Yeah.
It's Patrick Stewart. He plays, of course, Jean-Luc Picard, and he also plays Michael Williams.
Oh,
one
yeah.
of Henry's soldiers from Henry V. Yeah, if the cause be not good. Yeah.
That scene always messes me up because I always think, Picard's acting with Data. He's helping him out.
No, he's not.
And then he steps in, and I'm always like, wait, what? Did he pre-record himself? I don't understand.
Yeah, I guess we're giving, this is what we get up to on backtracking, people. I think he just wanted to do it, and they knew because he's got a long, RSC, Royal Shakespeare Company background that they just put him in there. But
that makes so much of the series make sense to me because not so much, but I remember a later episode. Crusher is trying to get him to act in a play, and he's like, they have that joke where he's like, I'm not an actor, and I'm like, we've already seen you do it in the show, but apparently we haven't.
No.
Oh my gosh.
He does help out Data, though, in the second to last episode, Emergence, where they're doing the Tempest.
Oh, okay. Okay, so...
Together. And also, more trivia for you. It's not the only time that Combs has done it, because he played Wei-Yun and also an unnamed holosuite guest in What You Leave Behind, the last episode of DS9. Oh,
I didn't even know that. Okay.
Yeah, that last episode of DS9, just about everybody, I don't think there's any extras. Everybody in the holosuite in that party scene near the end is a staffer, is a former actor, or just somebody who's there. They did that with These Are the Voyages as well, the last episode of Enterprise.
He's like the Michael Jordan of doubling up in Star Trek episodes.
You're the Michael Jordan of comparing people to Michael Jordan.
Thank you.
He's also one of only 5 people to play 7 or more different characters in the Star Trek franchise. And I won't go through the whole list, but J.G. Hertzler, the actor behind Martok, is another one.
Oh, okay. Shout out.
Yeah, Paramount is just, they have actors they like, and we've got a lot of makeup and latex here, so let's just bring them back. Who cares?
I always want to know, I would love to know the stories behind a lot of these people. Obviously, it's like they see them and they go, "Oh, you're great, come back." But I just want to know the details of their career with Star Trek.
I want to know if anybody ever turned him down.
Oh, on Star Trek or anywhere.
Yeah, Star Trek, they came on. Did something or other, and then Paramount's like, that worked great. That guy was on time. He was really good. Let's get him for another thing. And he's like, no, I'm not going to do that.
I'm sure there's someone. I mean, there's probably big gets like Kelsey Grammer. I bet they asked him
Kelsey
again.
Kelsey Grammer would have killed to do it again. I bet they probably couldn't afford him.
Okay, yeah.
He probably did the one he did on scale. Andy Robinson tells a story about how when he first was approached for Garak, he wasn't really like a Star Trek guy specifically, but he was like, I don't know. And then he took the part, and they were putting the makeup on him, and he is, like his character, claustrophobic. So as they're putting the makeup on, he got 20 minutes in of the 3 or 4 hour process, and he's like, no, I can't do this. And he just sort of clearly calmed down and went forward with it. But maybe if he hadn't been able to get his head around that, we just would have got one episode with Garrick.
We should have gotten Kelsey Grammer as Garrick. That would have been. For some reason, that you just planted that in my mind, and I was like, "This is ideal."
Plain, simple Garrick. I'm
Yes.
listening.
That's not a bad bit of casting.
Oh boy, I want to go to the universe where that is real. Who else is in this episode? Bruce French appears as the Vulcan Elder. French has had a long career in film and television, and he's also appeared in TNG, Voyager, and as a Sona officer in Star Trek Insurrection. So that's another one of those guys that is on the short list.
Nice.
Stephen Dennis appears as Tholos. He has distinguished himself as the kind of rapey Andorian in this episode.
Oh yeah, just a little unnecessary too with trying to. I said they were edgy, but it didn't
overwritten. Yeah,
didn't add to it too much. I didn't feel like
that's the RoboCop 3 touch that Fred Decker brings to your production. Dennis, he's an actor, a writer, and a theater director as well. He's the only actor. Here's another little fact for you. He's the only actor to play 5 different characters in a single Star Trek season, and that is the 5th season of Voyager. So he is very comfortable wearing makeup. Yeah. He reprises the role of Tholos in the follow-up episode to this, The Shadows of Pajem. Jeff Ricketts appears as Kaval. Ricketts is an actor, and he's also an acting instructor. He appeared previously on Enterprise as an Axanar captain in the 3rd episode of Enterprise, Fight or Flight. I actually believe that's the 2nd episode, just counting by production order. And Richard Tanner appears as the Vulcan Initiate. This is the guy who that Archer punches out at the end.
Yeah.
Tanner is an actor, writer, and a producer. He's had a long career in TV and film, and he appeared recently as shadowy figure in the 2018 short Taco Bell Web of Fries.
No. I think I've seen that.
I have. Yeah, I'm not the editor-in-chief of Adbusters, but I don't love advertising and what it does. But it's a pretty well-made short film. That's just kind of silly and stupid. Yeah, it stars Josh Duhamel as this just sort of mild-mannered guy who wonders why Taco Bell doesn't have fries, and it leads him down a rabbit hole.
I don't want to enjoy that or laugh at it at all, but there are a couple moments in that commercial where I'm like holding back a little chuckle, and I'm like, no.
Yeah. So he is in that. Let's talk about this episode. I was thinking about why people don't like Enterprise. I guess I don't want to get too far into it. We did talk about this. We talked about Twilight earlier in the year, but it's still kind of weird to me because I turn on Enterprise and I get people's frustrations with it. There are things that I'm really impressed by. There are things that I go, well, why did they do that? And there's also things, like a lot of Trek series, there's a lot of elements that clearly they thought we're just going to take off and people are going to love this, and you don't. And they just keep doing it, and you wonder why they keep doing it, and you wish they'd stop doing it, and they never stop. But I recently talked about the episode Where No One Has Gone Before with author Catherine Valenti on an earlier show, and it is the 6th episode of TNG, as this is the 6th episode of Enterprise, and this episode is leaps and bounds past what Where No One Has Gone Before in terms of the solidity of it, knowing who the characters are, delivering action, delivering fun stuff. Like, it is so tight. And you've got a Star Trek production that knows what it's doing, but this show only went for 4 years, but it knew what it was doing, or at least knew how to do it right out of the gate.
Yeah, it does have, kind of like I was saying too, like earlier, where it's like, it just feels like Star Trek. It does have like this polish to it that early like TNG doesn't have. And people are obviously more willing to wade through the first couple seasons of TNG because they know what's coming, or at the time it was maybe new Star Trek. But with this, I feel like it has to deliver more. It has to do better.
Is that we've seen this before, like in the case of Oasis, like we've seen this before. So you've got to bring us something bigger, something better, something more, or we're just going to tune out.
I think maybe. I've been trying to figure it out too for a while, because the first time I watched through the whole series, I actually enjoyed it for the most part. There was, like you said, a lot of stuff that I was like, I wish they would stop doing this. But I was like, I kind of wish it kept going.
Yeah.
But I now revisiting it, I am a little bit like even this episode I enjoyed, but there was something about it that I was like, this is kind of just like Star Trek I feel like I've seen, but with added things that annoy me.
Okay.
Like I think we talked about it previously, but like the relationship between with T'Pol and Archer and them, I feel is obnoxious, and kind of the prequel-y nature of certain things where it's like they're hinting at stuff that's going to come.
That is one of those things I wish they'd stop, but yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, so it is this weird thing where it's like, I'm enjoying this, but it's not like, I feel like I wanted it to like, I'm like, Star Trek, please blow my mind.
Well, holding off on the blowing of the minds and the things that we don't like, I agree that I think that this is I think this is solid. I think this is Star Trek, And I mean,
yeah.
Other than the things that might annoy you or the way that you feel like the show might let you down, I feel like if you are sick of Enterprise, then you're sick of Star Trek. Like it's still recognizable as Star Trek. And so I don't know what was going on at the time that people weren't having this. This happened a little bit to Voyager as well. And now with, 20, 25 years of distance, which, oh my God, but that's where we are. You look back and you watch them on, streaming or whatever. And I really like Voyager, and I'm finding myself really liking Enterprise. And you mentioned Zeitgeist before. I don't know what's different now, if it's me or if it's what we expect out of televisual entertainment, that so many people, Voyager is the most streamed Star Trek show on streaming networks.
Yeah.
So like, why now? Why now are people like, oh yeah, it's great. When back then I couldn't swing a targ without hitting one of my Star Trek friends who's like, it sucks.
I think Zeitgeist is a big thing with it. It's like when I was getting into Star Trek, there's a lot of things that you're just like told and kind of internalize it about the series that are true. One is like, Wesley Crusher is annoying and he saves the day way too much.
Yeah.
I recently, went through the whole first season of TNG, and I felt like that a couple times, but I was like, this really is not what it's like making a mountain out of a molehill a little bit. And I think that is true of like almost every series where it's like you have like these memes of, what to expect from every character or season.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just like, I think now that there's distance between it and people are just kind of like, a lot of people who aren't watching Star Trek now on like Netflix are probably not like going on like a message board and reading, those deeply ingrained things. So I think we can maybe get some new thoughts out there about it.
Yeah, I think that in terms of the memeability or the what you kind of expect in terms of, I know this character, like you put the top 7, the Magnificent 7 from TNG on a subway car, and you can tell how they're all going to react to whatever, a flash mob or a guy that's peeing himself or whatever. Whereas like Enterprise, why is a guy peeing himself? I'm just imagining this is a New York subway car in the movies, in the movie Joker.
It's gritty.
But oh boy. Hey, if you want to hear me and Gooey talk about how awesome Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola are, jump on over to Backtrekking, because we're going to talk about that over there. But anyway, I feel like these are the most shallow characters of this era of Trek.
Oh, yeah, I could back that for sure.
And partially it's maybe that they didn't get the full run of 7, but yeah, I just feel like, Hoshi's Hoshi and Malcolm is just Malcolm, and we get a little bit of revelations, we get a little bit of interesting stuff, but not really. Like Malcolm's got a sister, otherwise you just don't feel as connected to these characters and that they're as deep as other characters.
Yeah, when we get a scene with them in this episode up on the ship, I'm like, who are these people? Like, I know I've watched every single episode they're in, but like, I know nothing about them.
Yeah.
So even the characters, though, that we, like, I do feel like I have a better sense of, like, the stuff that I know about them, like, when I see them and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's them. It's like, I kind of don't like the traits that I know. You know, I find the main characters a little obnoxious. So maybe that's another current running underneath it that makes it a little bit the barrier of entry a little bit harder.
See, it's enticing though, because doing that, scuffing our characters up, making them not perfect is what's happening on Discovery right now. And it's really working for some people, and it works mostly for me, but I also find it kind of annoying a little bit. But I really like that as a premise for this show. And I think this episode, it's one of the reasons I picked it, is a perfect encapsulation of that. Like, what are these guys doing out here? They're literally here, flying through space, and they go someplace that isn't, they remark early in the episode, we got all these maps, so we're not really explorers, are we? We're on the map. And they go to a place that's on the map, and immediately find themselves in the middle of a international incident that pays off way, way down the line. But if they had just not been themselves and had just sat there, got punched a couple times, answered their questions, the Andorians would have taken off, no problem. But humans in this universe, and I guess probably in the real universe too, just have to meddle in everything. And so they end up like creating this huge intergalactic or interstellar conflict because they just won't butt out as everybody is telling them to do. I like that as the characterization of humans at this early point, this pre-Federation time. And also it's perfect for the time period, not us doing it in real life, but the fact that, the American adventurism, it's reflected in this sort of early version of Starfleet, which we probably should check ourselves before we wreck anything else in terms of our adventurism. But I think it's a good parallel for a Starfleet that hasn't figured it out yet. There should be some kind of rule for this.
Some sort of directive?
Possibly.
You sort of convinced me to like it a little bit more, because I was thinking when I was watching this and like other episodes I've watched recently, where there is this like idea of, okay, humans going into space for, to explore now for real. But they kind of have people like babysitting them. Like the Vulcans are supposed to be like babysitting them. Yeah. But like I was thinking watching these episodes like that, I didn't really feel that way watching it. Like that would be an interesting take to be like, what is it like when you have someone looking over your shoulder? But you sort of actually put the episode in a context that it sort of was doing that. Like, they're forced to go somewhere they've been. I don't know why that didn't click with me at the time, but I do.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. But that's it. That is what makes me want to rewatch it even more, to see like if that theme comes up again. Because all I can remember is them being like, we got this Vulcan lady here. Like, it feels very like on their side a little bit too much,
Yeah. Well, save it. We're going to talk about that. Save it. I wanted to talk quick about just continuing in that theme. Like, I think that there are some tropes that get repeated in Enterprise that appear in all throughout science fiction. And I mean, even just regular fiction, like the idea of humanity being shepherded by a superior race, aliens kind of like giving us some help. And then usually in fiction, it turns out that they have some weird ulterior motive, or they have like a purer motive than humanity can understand.
I'm
going to talk about Childhood's End, and I've only seen the TV adaptation. I've never actually read it, unfortunately. But in that, aliens show up on Earth, go, hey, what's going on? We want to give you a bunch of cool stuff. Don't ask any questions for a while. We're just going to like cure disease and all that. And of course, humanity, some people are like, great. Other people are like, no, we're going to form this rebellion. And what it turns out to be, slight spoilers, is that none of it matters. Like, what the aliens are doing will help us to a level, will take us beyond a singularity where we could be concerned about what happens to the sort of petty ideas that we have, you know. So they're helping us, but they're also really destroying our society as we know it. Like, that's the kind of thing that you get. We get something like that in this, in that when the guy walks out and like shakes, you know, Farmer Hoggett's hand, everything changes on Earth, but our fundamental humanity doesn't really change. And so a lot of guys get punched in the face by the guy from Quantum Leap. And like, part of me really likes that. Like, I joke about Archer punching guys all the time, but when he clocks that Vulcan in this episode, I was like, ew, get him.
And that dude is very punchable.
Shadowy figure. But also we've got a show where the guy from Quantum Leap is punching everybody, and it's supposed to be a show where we're drinking tea with diplomats, and we're going, yes, we're so intellectual. So yeah, it's hard to parse those things, and Star Trek not only finds itself at a fulcrum point in the zeitgeist, but also a fulcrum point in its identity, which is like, can we tell episodes or stories like this that are different than what you think of as Trek? Fast forward 19 years, they're just doing it now. Like Discovery, we're just doing it. They don't. They're not even asking themselves that question, for better or for worse.
Right. I do like, and that does, Archer in that way sets himself aside from even, you know, people like to say like Kirk's like the swashbuckler captain, you know, he's this, but like Archer really is, you know, he's out there who's just like, he is like set with like already the rules. He's like, whatever, you know. I do like that, and I do agree with you. I like the idea of like he's kind of going against it, but I want to see more, and I kind of want to see like, I want to see checks and balances is all I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Check yourself before you wreck yourself.
Before you wreck anybody else. Yeah.
I'd like to see, I just think it would be interesting to see more interplay. I guess that's why T'Pol is there, but I feel like all I can think of right now that she's bringing to the table is just like, you know, she can help them in the situation. Yeah. It's like, we got to convince her to like be on our side almost. I'd like to see, you know, more where it's like, maybe they're right sometimes. Maybe.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They rarely ever are. I think that we are supposed to side so much with the humans, and that I think is a departure because, I mean, I guess TOS was like it a little bit, but definitely TNG set up the idea that we weren't going to be right all the time, and our emotions are going to get in the way. Our preconceptions are going to get in the way. There's that famous quote that everybody loves to post from Picard about how you can make no mistakes and still lose. And that's just the way it is sometimes. That is a very, very even-handed, broad sort of philosophy that doesn't show up in this at all. Archer's always frustrated and mad, and he's almost always right.
Right.
And I understand his frustration. Like he's grown up, you know, under the Vulcan protectorship of Earth, and you know, his dad didn't get to see him, you know, go into space, and so I understand why he's frustrated. But you know, in Contact, when she says they should have sent a poet because the things that she's seeing she can't even describe, they should have sent a diplomat. Like, they send this guy out there who's mad and he's resentful, and he's punching Gary Graham, or actually I don't think he punches Gary Graham. He never would have made it off the ground, but he wants to. And so he brings that to everything. And I don't think, I actually haven't seen every episode of Enterprise yet, confession. I've seen the major ones, but he never really is cured of that. At least, you know, not really until like the very end. And that's not the guy that I want out there. I want Captain Picard out there. I want somebody who is more, somebody like Captain Kirk who can handle those emotions better. Totally. Why is this guy out there?
I like the idea that like, I do like that there's someone out there in the show that I don't want out there. But what's interesting about like other shows is like, or one aspect is that like in just TNG, for example, it's like, you know, Picard can have one idea about one thing, but like obviously Worf, because of his background, can have some radically different take on something. And there even a show where they said there's no conflict, there is often good conflict between what they think is the right thing to do, whereas this, I just don't think we talked about some of the lower tier characters. Like, I don't know if Archer really wants to do something, like what, any of them are going to do about it. But maybe there's an episode where they deal with that. I don't know.
And Worf's not in charge, and he's never in charge.
Yes.
His solution is always shoot him, which I guess if there was a Klingon television network, he'd be the hero of that show, and the episodes would be really short. But he's never in charge. And even when we learn to love that character, and he's been around for 14 years of TV, he's still never really in charge. And the only time that he is in charge, when kill him is the right answer, is when he is dealing with other Klingons. So our show always remains in the philosophy of Trek, which is it's always better to talk than to shoot. It's always better to shake hands than to throw a punch. And Enterprise is like, what if Worf was in charge? What if this was one of those ships or captains that Picard meets and is like, what's going on with this guy? Like, what if that was our main ship and our main show?
Which is not a bad idea.
No, it's not. But I don't
awesome.
think that they had the time, energy, or desire to really take it where it needed to go.
That might actually be what can make or break a Star Trek show, is not how quote unquote Star Trek it is, but like you hear the premise of a show and you're like, well, that sounds, fascinating or not or whatever. And if it delivers on that premise,
It's called Section 31 and it's coming out soon.
Okay, I guess we'll see. Yeah.
Here we go. Yep. Well, let's do it. Let's talk about the smelling Vulcan in the room. T'Pol.
Oh, yeah. Which that's the most standout thing, I think, in this episode of something I hate. Yeah.
T'Pol is like, to quote George Lucas, is the key to this whole thing, if we can get her working, because we've never had a character this funny before. The quote went on too long, but the point is that I think T'Pol being a success as a presence and a character on the show would have really helped. And I don't think that is what happens on the show, unfortunately. And I wouldn't put it at the feet of the actress Jolene Blalock, who, to be honest, I've never seen in anything else. I don't really know.
I don't know
what she's like. I know that her depiction of T'Pol is fairly limited in most episodes. And of course, all Vulcan actors have to kind of pick their lane as far as portraying a Vulcan, but it's also the writing does her no favors. And you and I have talked about, you brought up how she's always the butt of the joke. I think we talked about this on a previous episode. When you have Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, it's three people who are all equal and in a triangle. So one guy's throwing it to one guy's making fun of the other guy, the two guys gang up on one, but the other guy says something else, and now they're ganging up on the other guy. That never happens in the trifecta. Like, I love Trip, I love Archer, I love the idea of T'Pol, but she is always on the wrong end of things. And I don't know how it would be any different if we had a different character. Like, what if, what if Gary Graham came along instead? Would it be a different situation? Like, if we had a different personality for the Vulcan? Clearly there was, they were trying to put a character with some sex appeal in there, and so we got what we got. But yeah, if she had worked, I think it could have worked, or would have had a better chance to work.
Yeah, I feel like the depth of like the writing a lot of the times, because I'm sure there's some shining moments, but like it feels like more of like, I don't want to say like a caricature, but it almost is like what you expect from like a like random Vulcan side character, where you kind of hit those familiar Vulcan things and you go, yeah, the Vulcan, Like, that's how I feel a lot of times when I see her in these episodes, is like, yeah, okay, she does an okay job of portraying a Vulcan, but I feel like they should have given her more to do or something, a hook with their character.
A lot of the beats are real heavy-handed when Enterprise is remembering to do what its like pitch document says. So you've got, like, you'll get a lot of episodes where they'll find an amazing like trinary star cluster, and Archer will be like, man, I'd really love to see that. It's like, really? You're just punching somebody out like 2 minutes ago. But it's like, no, I'm an explorer. And one thing that they do is that you set up this subtle racism between the Vulcans and the humans, and they just landed on smelling bad. The humans, I guess, smell bad. And they hit that every chance they get, like early in the series. We just hear that over and over again. And it's like, find a new take. There are a lot of ways that you can... humanity has a lot of experience at being racist. Like, find other things to do.
Right. And it sucks that that's like, it's so early on, so that has to become the thing.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have to, but that would have been one thing if it's like, they said it, and it was like this weird one-off comment, but now it's like, that's the thing.
And it isn't even true necessarily. It could be just that, like, I don't know, somebody farted at a diplomatic function one time, and like now the Vulcans are like, oh, I think they smell bad. Oh yeah, they definitely smell bad. And it's just, yeah, I mean, they're racist, but that's all you got. Yeah,
and also speaking of canon, the fact that it is like now it's canon that like T'Pol, didn't they say like she takes something for the smell?
Yes.
I don't know if that was a joke or something, but I was like, I don't care about like canon or whatever, but the fact that like that's somewhere in the history books like drives me a little crazy.
Yeah, it's true. But it's just one of those things that you have to accept and just move on. Like, I used to think Drakkar Noir smelled great, but now I can barely stand it. So, people change.
Why'd they have to share a blanket?
Oh, Enterprise. Like... Enterprise and its forced intimacy.
But like the moment didn't feel like anything either.
Well, it never feels like that when anybody's, rubbing oil on each other's tits or whatever. So, but yeah, we had to get something like that in there. So.
Oh yeah, they do have like a sexy oil scene with her, don't they?
Everybody quick to the sexy oil rubbing booth. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't know, like I didn't understand the purpose of it other than for the line again about smelling, because I was like, it didn't feel like, oh, they like that sucks, they have to share a blanket. It also didn't feel like, oh, what's going on? It just felt like it was so throwaway, much like earlier in the episode where the one guy's like, I will have you to her
as a prisoner. Yes.
And I was like, what is that? Yeah,
that is Fred Decker, the guy that wrote Monster Squad and RoboCop 3, writing that. And then Brandon Braga or whoever reading it going, is that? No. That's what we're doing here. We're getting it extreme. We're intense.
I'm not opposed to the idea of the Andorians being...
rapey?
Despicable or rapey, I guess. Like,
oh, no.
If you have something interesting to say, but it just felt like, ooh, this is really gonna get them.
Look, there's got to be. we both like the episode. We should.
Oh yeah, sure.
It was chosen as the number 2 fan favorite in an online poll conducted by the United Paramount Network. So it's like the number 2 episode as far as UPN is concerned of Enterprise. So let's talk about some of the things that we really liked. There are a lot of touches in this that I like. I like just the idea of like a hostage situation. And, like a
simple
dog day
premise.
afternoon situation they have to figure out. Yeah. I liked when they're doing their... I don't know why the Andorians leave them alone for so long, but I like when they're doing their planning and they use the little tokens or prayer beads or whatever, and they're making like the makeshift map. I love the scene where... Archer is, all right, we need time for this plan to work, and Trip's going to be fixing this thing. So Archer's like, I'll tell you whatever you want to know. And then they take him in, and it's just all nonsense. He's just talking about the ball of string in Ohio or whatever. And they're kicking the crap out of him. And I know you were joking, but on the Discord, you said, what's a Farscape? Now, first of all, don't make me hurt you. But second of all...
No, we can't. You can't talk about it on your show.
Well, here it is. That's a very John Crichton move. It is a very...
okay.
You would rarely see... Kirk, you'd never see Picard do that. Or maybe he has. But anyway, it's so self-effacing. Do you know what I mean? Usually our Trek heroes are smart and they are sort of well put together. And so it's about talking or seducing the other person. In this case, Archer is a luminary. He's our greatest astronaut on Earth. Out here, he's just a yokel in a jumpsuit. So he knows that all he can do is just put his body in the way of this thing and buy 10 minutes for Trip to get the job done. And so, he's not able to like threaten Shran. He's not able to do anything. He's just able to be to play into the idea that we are just
Yeah.
these hayseeds, these just idiot humans out in space, to the point where even Shran is like, what's going on with you? Do you just like getting punched? But it shows how smart I think that the Andorians and Shran is, that in a lot of these shows and a lot of the episodes like this, it seems like every race that we meet has never, they haven't developed stalling. They don't know he's going to be sick trick. They've never heard of playing possum. And we get a little bit of this, but then Shran is like, come on, he's just wasting our time, clearly. And they get him out of there. So we get to see like an interesting thing from both people in this one scene.
Yeah, some back and forth.
Yeah.
I think I think I need you to explain every episode of Enterprise to me, and I'll like it more. I think.
Well,
because I was watching that, and I was
look for that coming soon from the Just Enough Trope Network.
there. Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, I was watching this thinking like, this is pretty fun. This is pretty fun, but
I like when they blow that face up.
Oh, the face.
Yeah.
Which is I laughed actually.
It could have been anything. Way. It could have been a wall. It could have been but instead they're like, let's blow a face up. Why not?
I like they had a whole mission to go figure out that the three. It was maybe a little cheesy, but they're like, I saw 3 things of light, and you're like, it's the face holes.
Right. I know, when you could just look through the gaping mouth in this wall.
I liked just the seeing that geographic location, I guess. Like, I thought that was really neat. Like, seeing a little bit more of a Vulcan monastery or whatever.
Yeah, the episode looks great. Like, when we're going to talk about an episode called We'll Always Have Paris. And in that episode, there's a cafe in France, apparently, which is clearly just like the corner of a soundstage with all the crap that we could find like thrown onto it. But this episode and a lot of Enterprise looks great. Like, they really know what they're doing at this point, and everything looks fantastic.
I always like when they go to a planet in Star Trek, and it's not just like some boulders and a purple sky, sky. Like, this felt like a real place.
Yeah, I also like when they are they're having the phaser fight, and the guy's like, there are many relics here, be careful. It's like, okay. And they just like blow everything away. Just priceless vases. They're in the back room of a museum and just blowing everything up. And I think the prop person got a little overzealous, because at one point there's a sort of ancient, it looks like a Chinese terracotta horse. And it's like, what, the Vulcans had horses? Is that what I'm to believe?
Yeah, what's a Vulcan horse like, I wonder?
It looks like a horse.
They just had horses, I guess. Well, they talk about bats and no, never mind. They don't talk about bats. I know other planets have bats in Star Trek.
Tiberian bats.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like. Yeah. The trinkets do get a little bit like, okay, this is a little bit Halloween store trinkety, a step up from that. But you know what I mean. Like,
yeah.
But overall, I think it was cool. Like, I always see like teases of the Vulcan, or like what their buildings and like stuff like that would look like, and
right.
So just seeing something actually like furnished and not going back to the original series, you don't really get some fun sets and stuff. I always love those, but it was cool to see something that felt indoors, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, and the observation post set at the end, which of course was all in effect, but
yeah,
was neat looking. I also like how I don't know. I was never bored in the episode, knowing where it goes. I was kind of like, okay, let's get there. But I think the first time I watched it, I really didn't. I don't know. I read a review that said, if you don't know that there's going to be a listening post at the end, then oh boy. I didn't know. I was surprised, and I like the fact that I don't know. I just like that Archer is disgusted, and he's like, "Give me your disposable camera. There, take a bunch of pictures. Get that to the photo mat." He's just takes it upon himself, which also, like, yeah, okay. So it's an international incident that the Vulcans have this thing spying on the Andorians, but also it's a big incident that a human who is under the protection of the Vulcans busts into a Vulcan monastery, shoots up their reliquary, and then reveals this huge state secret to like their enemy, and then punches a guy on the way out. Like, why is this guy not in jail on Vulcan?
Yeah, I thought that was sick, actually, though.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah,
thanks for the tour. Like, and he's just like, thanks for the tour.
That as far as like the story of the episode goes, I thought everything was clicking the whole time. Even, I did know obviously someone here is up to something, so I'm not going to be like, I knew there was a listening post the whole time.
Sure.
But I think everything fell into line really well, and I was enjoying it. But that ending did make me think, like, I want to know what the consequences for this are. And it has kind of this more old school Star Trek thing where I don't know, he probably gets like a slap on the wrist or something,
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. Like that
Gary
would be
Graham
interesting.
yells at him some more. Yeah.
Not that the whole series needs to be about this incident, but
Well, I think we've covered just about all I can really think of for this episode. Any last thoughts that you have, stuff that we haven't said?
Like in the very beginning when they go there to the down in there and they have the guy who's just like trying to, shoo them away. Like,
yeah,
like it almost reminds me of like I don't know. You go into rob a bank and they're like trying to play it cool,
right?
like
Yeah,
everything's
yeah,
normal. Yeah. Like it did that had probably the most tension for me than anything in the episode, and I thought that was and Archer is really fun in that moment too. So like, yeah, I just wanted to give that little moment a shout out too.
I just saw the movie JCVD recently.
Okay.
Which of course is the sort of meta movie starring Jean-Claude Van Damme as himself. And it's, I wouldn't run out and see it. It's okay. It's not great, but the beginning of it starts with, the premise is that needs some money to give to his lawyer, for this like custody case that he's a part of. So he runs into this bank. It's actually a post office, because you can get money from post offices in other countries. I don't know. Everywhere else that's not America is weird. The Enterprise story, but and that's happening. It's being robbed, and so there's hostages. And he goes to the girl, and he's like, I need some money, please." And she's like, "Yeah, we don't have any money." He's like, "How do you not have money? What are you talking about?" And he has this like huge breakdown because he really needs this money. And the irony, of course, is that everybody has a gun to their head, and they're like, "Shut up, man! It does not matter. Just leave." We didn't have that kind of tension here. They just see a hint of blue skin between the slats of a screen. So I wish that there was a little more, something more than just T'Pol seeing a crooked statue, like somebody makes a mistake, or the Vulcan guy is like, "Help me," or just something. But once we get into it, they get into it. And I like how right away there's that invisible asshole communication between Trip and Archer, where it's like, "Are we going to get to bust something up? Let's do it." And they're like, "Oh
they
boy,
just jump on it." I did love that.
yeah, it's "Oh boy, what does what Trip say?" He's like, "No, I think you're thinking about the Blarney Stone, right?"
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Or rubbing Buddha's belly.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. What you said there, to maybe put a cap on my feelings about, you wish that scene, it reminds you of that trope, but maybe if it had a little bit more there, like that's kind of how I feel about a lot of the episode. Was I liked everything it did, but I wish it was a little more in every aspect, like figuring out the plan to blow up the face, and there's this whole element of the transporter. Will that work? Yeah, I wish there was just like a little bit more tension in the episode of the hostage situation. That might have made it a little bit more exciting for me.
Now that we've reached the end of the show, normally you would receive a promotion because you have the rank of ensign and a promotion to lieutenant junior grade. But as a podcaster on the Just Enough Trope Network and of other shows on other networks, I think you qualify as a VIP or a dignitary. An ambassador, if you will. Ooh, an ambassador like the Andorians in Journey to Babel, the first time that we see the Andorians.
Oh, I feel legendary at this point.
Do you remember Journey to Babel and the fake Andorian who's like,
yeah,
his antenna breaks off?
That's with Sarek's there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a classic.
So you said previously, it was actually kind of sad if you go back and listen to the episode, you and Heel Mary, your co-host on Existence is Futile, you guys, you were going to be a barback and she was going to work in an office in the Star Trek future. So
what?
now that you have this elevated position, what specific issue or conflict would you focus on as an ambassador?
Okay. Because I also think in backtracking, I said I was the assistant manager of that podcast.
And I tried to pitch you guys on a Star Trek cooking show that you could take and run with, but
okay. So I'm trying to think. You mentioned the other podcasts, so maybe I could be like an ambassador to, and I've done this before. I could be an ambassador to maybe pro wrestling or video games or something like that.
Sure,
if you ever need to interact with the internet wrestling community and need a filter because it's kind of terrible, like you could call me up.
I'm sure they've done this in spirit, but I always thought that it would if they'd found a professional wrestling planet, that would have been really cool.
My God.
Just like a planet where everybody has like a weird, very specific gimmick, like I'm a barber, or just like guys who have like wear spikes and have face paint, and they're just they're normal people. They're just trying to get dilithium or something. But yeah, it's like the wrestling planet.
Right. They could find a planet where like for some reason like a bunch of old VHS tapes landed there, and like that became their whole culture.
Vince McMahon is an idiot for never thinking of this.
Wow. Okay,
do a piece of the action, but with WCW wrestlers. That
would be
circa 1980, or the mid 80s. Sting comes in. It's Sting this week on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
There's mullets. Oh man.
Well, you got it. We did it.
Yes.
Well, Ambassador Fame, thank you for joining me to talk about Star Trek and the Star Trek universe. If people want to continue the conversation, and they can, at EISTpod on Twitter and the Enterprising Individuals Facebook page, where can people find you online?
I guess on Twitter would be the best place. At Gooey Fame is my handle.
Sure.
Yeah. Check me out there.
And I should probably put a plug in here for our other Star Trek show on the network, Backtracking. As we mentioned before, we talk about the inspiration behind classic Trek episodes. It sounds a lot like what we did today. So if you enjoyed this, head on over and listen to what's going on Backtracking. Do you want to talk about your other shows too?
Oh, sure. Yeah. You can check out Virtual Theater on wherever you get your podcasts, on SoundCloud, all that. It's at Virtual Theater X on Twitter. I don't know. By this time, we'll have done Castlevania, the Netflix first season on Netflix.
Sure.
And we've got some other. What else did we do recently? We did Wreck-It Ralph, Prince of Persia. We talk about all kinds of video game movies, or even sometimes we break the mold and we did like Avengers Endgame because.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
And then, I also have a show called Pro Wrestling Required Viewing, which has been inactive, but we might be doing something soon. So be on the lookout for that.
All right. Well, thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you. Yeah, it was great.
We're signing off until the next mission. Hailing frequencies closed.
On your mind.